thank you so much for inviting me. For the last half an hour, I suffered severe imposter syndrome because I learned so much from Cesare. So thank you very, very much. It was incredibly helpful, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. And I really feel a little bit inadequate because I'm not a mathematician. I do teach statistics a little bit to my bioscience students, undergraduate and postgraduate students, but I also teach a lot of biochemistry. And what I have seen in terms of the introduction of the large language model by Cesare is just absolutely mind-blowing. So please forgive me if I am sort of here the almost the idiot in the room. What I want to do in this presentation is basically look at generative AI in the classroom and how we can utilize it. So I want to give a brief overview. Why should we do it? Why should we think about it? And then also a little bit of what do we need to bear in mind when we teach the students to use generative AI. So a little bit of the issues, and I think Cesare has really very, very nicely and eloquently pointed out that there are some problems. It can't do maths, not yet, at least. And then I want to move on to do a little bit more of practical approaches, how we can actually integrate generative AI into the classroom. Now, when I talk about generative AI, I am predominantly talking about ChatGPT, but it should also be thought of other generative AIs that are actually producing meaningful output, for example, like DALL-E, Midjourney, and there are loads and loads of new sort of AI models currently in development or springing up that will cover all aspects. So, for example, how to generate your own YouTube video and things like that. So, first of all, why should we actually use it? Well, I found something by Goldman Sachs. They recently released a white paper, and they actually said that as a tool using advances in natural language processing work their way into business and society, they could drive a 7% or almost 7 trillion US dollar increase in global GDP. That's a nice dinner. 7 trillion US dollars, or 1.5% over 10 years. And they also claimed that they predict that generative AI will affect around 300 million jobs in one way or another. So in a way, if we want our students to be successful in a future career in a job market, I think we have no other option but actually to talk about the elephant in the room, generative AI. So how can it be used? And I think Cesare already gave a really nice overview of things. Now, what I have done is I asked ChatGPT, how can generative AI be used? And I've stolen some of the suggestions that it made to me. So what you see next are a few suggestions made by ChatGPT about its own use. So, for example, it can develop writing skills. Now, I'm fully aware that in maths, you have a very formalistic way of writing, but in a way you can actually, how shall I say, you can inspire, you can motivate, you can engage students when they see, for example, a description of the chain rule written as a pirate. And let me see if I can find that. I've asked ChatGPT to do that. It was the chain rule. So hopefully, oops, no. Well, actually, what you can do is ask ChatGPT to give a description of the chain rule as a pirate. It's good fun, but you know, for maths, probably not so much. But if you are, for example, an English teacher, you can inspire students to try out writing styles for different genres and in different styles. Students can, for example, put a block of text into the ChatGPT and ask for feedback. Is this a good formal writing style? Does that make sense? How can I improve that? So that's certainly something that can be useful for students who want to do better writing. We can use it for language translation. Now, of course, Google Translate can do that as well. But with Google Translate, it doesn't give you the sentiment of what the speaker or the writer said in the first place. I tried that out. I saw a comment of a friend that was in the Malaysian language. Very clearly, she complained about Malaysian Airlines. So I put it into Google Translate, and yes, I got the gist. She was not happy about things. And then I put that into ChatGPT, and I got a far more nuanced interpretation of what she actually said. So I went back to her and said, "Is that what you meant?" And she said, "Yeah, that's absolutely spot on." So language translation is something that gives us more when we can utilize that. We can use it for research. For example, my final year project students, I encourage them to use an AI called illicit.org. This is an AI based on ChatGPT, but that links into research publications. And you can basically ask this particular AI to come up with answers to research questions. So, for example, you could ask the question, is there a link between diabetes and teaching maths? For example, I'm just hallucinating. I just make something up. By the way, I've seen that in the chat. The term hallucinating, that is the official technical term when ChatGPT just simply makes something up. And now I just made up this research question. But illicit.org will go through publications and will look at papers that have basically these tokens in it. And it will try to present you with 5 or 6 papers that actually try to address this particular research question. And it summarizes the papers as well. So I encouraged my project students, my final year project students, for their research projects, for their dissertation projects, to actually use this illicit.org and come up with good research questions that they could then take forward. I found it incredibly useful, and so did my students when I showed them how to do it, how they can actually prepare for exams. Now, in biosciences, we very often have multiple choice exams, like in medical school as well, but also short answer questions. So, for example, where in the cell do certain processes happen, etc., etc. And what ChatGPT, for example, does very, very well is it produces questions. So I can, for example, ask ChatGPT to generate 5 multiple choice questions on a particular topic with 5 possible answers, but don't show me the answers. Just show me the questions. And then the students, I showed my students how to do that, and then the students try to find out the correct answers on a piece of paper, and then in the next prompt I say, now show me the correct answers. And it worked really, really well. The error rate, I would say, was probably less than 20%, which is really good. And it can, of course, be customized to the level of the knowledge of the student. So that I can do that, for example, for KS1, KS4, or KS5, or university students. So I can really write specific questions, and the students can do that themselves and practice questions and go even beyond what we've done in the lectures, for example. A great thing is that it can write code. So I used to spend hours and hours on producing websites for my students where they can do practice questions, so HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and so on and so forth. And now I just simply ask the AI, give me a JavaScript snippet that actually does include a button or something like that, and does a basic calculation. And it will generate the code. So I just present the problem, and the AI will write the code. Python, R, you name it, it can do it. It's great. We can use it, as Giselle really nicely pointed out, as assistive technology. Be My Eyes is an AI for partly or fully for students with visual impairment. So we can use AIs to support students. They can also then use AI to overcome their limitations. They can, for example, easily type by speaking something that is then corrected and actually makes sense. So assistive technology is another very big thing where we can help our students with, and that AI can actually do that. We can also go through adaptive learning, because we know as educators, of course, we know that learning is a journey, and not two people learn in the same way. You probably are very familiar with the observation that when you look at your first year undergraduate students, you have a vast spectrum of skills and abilities. You have students who are, absolute fantastic, and then there are students who are maybe need a little bit more help. And then you've got the broad middle spectrum. But how can you stretch the abled? How can you support the students who need support? And in a way, generative artificial intelligence like ChatGPT can support exactly that. You can give students who are really the high flyers more challenging questions and stretch them further. So that's certainly a very good thing that we can use. But of course, it's not all singing and dancing. And as Cesare rightly said, we need to be really very critical about what is going on and what questions there are. What do we need to ask in terms of should we, shouldn't we? And of course, I'm a firm believer of yes, we should. We must teach our students in being critical. and not just by saying, is this result correct or not? That goes without saying. Students need to be very critical about what they actually find. Very often I hear that critics say it is a strong dependence on technology. Yeah, of course, it is a dependence on technology. And if students become overly reliant on models like GPT, they might lose the ability to critically write and evaluate and communicate. So that is a big problem. And some people said to me, if you are in the middle of the rainforest in Brazil and you don't have internet, what are you going to do? Well, okay, yeah, it's a fair point. But then on the other hand, let me put it this way. If you are in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, you probably have other problems than your stable internet connection to look up, for example, the chain rule or something like that. But it is something that we need to think about. We need to be aware that these large language models, they have been trained on certain texts, and these texts, they are all biased in a way. Every model, which is a representation of reality, has a bias in it inherently. So LLMs have been trained on Western texts, but they will not necessarily capture, for example, Eastern ways of thinking. And it's just a sort of a general remark. There are biases in it, and we need students to be aware of these biases. Intellectual property. Who actually owns what a language model, what a generative AI produces? Who owns the images, for example, that Midjourney produces? Who owns the text that people generate to write books, to write novels? So we need to be very careful with that. Now, currently, I'm not an IP lawyer, so whatever I say, please take with a pinch of salt. But my understanding of IP right is that you can only hold intellectual property rights if you are human. So a picture that is painted by an elephant does not belong to the elephant. A picture that has been created by Midjourney or text that has been created by ChatGPT does not belong to OpenAI, for example. At the moment, I know that people are working on that, and that is something we definitely need to instill in our students and make them aware of it. There are security risks. Because whenever we submit something, then it will be out in the open. That is, for example, why Apple strictly controls or stopped its employees to use ChatGPT because they don't want any security breaches. So we need to make the students aware that, whatever you say, it will be available and it will be out. So GDPR, data breaches, industrial espionage, and things like that. These are all potential issues that we need to discuss with the student. Now, of course, we have further ethical considerations. The way I see it is that it will divide our society at one point. There will be a group of people who actually will be able to use it in a very imaginative, creative way. They will write APIs, they will make these connections, and they are the winners. There will be a large group of people who, on the other hand, have absolutely no access to this information highway, and they will struggle in a job market. And that causes actually ethical dilemmas. What should we do? While Cesare said that it will be available everywhere, we saw in the pandemic that a lot of students struggle with internet connections. So, we need to be careful and mindful of these issues. So how can we implement generative AI in our teaching? Not just maths, but in general. So the very first step, as Cesare totally rightly mentioned, is we need to explain to students how it works. How does an LLM work? How is it built? What can it do? What can't it do? So we could start with workshops on what is the basic generative AI, and we can give examples how they can be used in various contexts. Creative writing, what I've just basically highlighted. We can demonstrate responsible use. We can highlight to the students these issues that I just mentioned with responsibility and ethical usage. We need to make them aware of the bias and the limitations, and how this can actually transform the way we live, the way everything works. We need to encourage our students to critically analyze what actually the outcomes are. So it's a little bit like when we introduced the calculators, and we've all seen it. Students very happily try to do very complicated calculations. They put something in the calculator, and then without any further thinking, they write down the result, and it might be out by 15 orders of magnitude. I've seen something like that. And then you ask the student, what do you think about it? Oh, I didn't think. So we need to train the students to critically analyze what these results actually mean. We need to teach them how to edit and refine the outputs. So if it doesn't give me what I initially expected, how do I modify the prompt so that I get what I want? Whatever we do, however, we need to incorporate AI into our curriculum. And I think we have no other option if we don't want our students to fall behind. If we want our students to be successful, it has to be in the curriculum. And because it will be a skill to master the beast, it will be a skill that will create jobs. It can also foster collaboration. You can, for example, split a class and say, okay, you are a group that looks at the prompts, you are a group that looks at the output, and then you just put them together and ask the students to collaborate and work. And it gives the students, that is my personal observation, it gives the students a sense of belonging. Hey, we are doing something here together. This is really cool. This is excellent. Now, in terms of practical tips, we need to make sure that the students understand how things work. And when we talk about practical tips, one of the things that Cesare highlighted is be specific, be almost sort of hyper-specific. So here's this old programmer joke. Mom said, please go to the shop and get a bottle of milk. And if they have eggs, bring 6. So come home with 6 bottles of milk. Why 6 bottles? Yeah, well, they had eggs. So this is an example here for not specific prompt for a not specific task. And although the AI might get it right, depending on the temperature setting or something like that Cesare mentioned, students will need to learn how to actually be very, very clear about what they ask. Now, we can practice that very easily. We can, for example, do a ChatGPT Q&A session in a lecture. Have a Q&A session with ChatGPT about whatever topic and show the students how you properly write prompts, for example. And then you can discuss that with your class. How accurate is it? How can we actually improve that? I showed it to my students how you can do that. And during the session, the student, one of the students said to me, actually, I noticed that the output is always the same. So I've modified the prompt a little bit. And now it is sort of in random order. And I thought, wow, that guy, he really got it. Teach the students how to write meaningful, specific prompts. So present them with a problem, say, this is the prompt, or what would you write as a prompt? And let's see how they get on with that. Now, here are a few rules for what is generally called prompt engineering. By the way, this is one of the jobs that if you look on Google, or if you ask ChatGPT, what are good jobs for in the area of generative AI, prompt engineering will be one of them. I have seen that current figures say that you can earn up to 300K US dollars per year if you know how to write prompts. And that's absolutely amazing. So be specific, provide context. I always tell ChatGPT, you are a biochemistry professor, or you are a KS3 biology teacher, or something like that. That gives context, and the AI will be more likely to produce a meaningful result. As Cesare said, use natural language. Try to speak to it like you would speak to a mate. Use examples. So very often I give the ChatGPT something like, I want the output to be in a particular, say, JSON format with this key and value pair. Now, that helps in a way to get meaningful, good results. And then also, of course, test and refine. These books that are and applications that are touted on Facebook and God knows where it says 100 prompts that make you successful. Yeah, that's lovely. I really like them because it's so nonsensical. Because it really depends on what you actually want to have. So therefore, I will never get it right on the first prompt that I put in. But I then use this and learn from my mistakes. And this is, again, is an incredibly powerful tool for students to understand that, if you don't succeed the first time, try again. So in a way, it encourages failure. And that's a good thing, in my view, in terms of learning. So, as I said, if you don't succeed the first time, try again. However, if you are doing parachuting, this is not a good starting point. But everything else, this is really something that is all about learning, isn't it? Give students research assignments. Give them a research project where they can actually use generative AI to find information related to a specific topic. And then they can ask questions, they get the answers, and you can guide them through, well, let's push that a little bit. So it can be very interesting what students together with the AI come up with. And there are certainly research areas that people can utilize it. Ask a problem, and the students need to translate that into a code, for example, Python, or into an R script. Very easy. Here is the problem, translate it, and now see whether the program runs and it gives you the correct output. This is a skill that will be incredibly sought after by companies. Or, and that is the homework, build a dialogue system, use an LLM like Cesare suggested, try to build a basic system. And again, that could be something that can be easily assessed. If you so wish, where students not just simply do my homework, but where they have to really probably work together with the AI to build a new, let's say, API or something like that, do a project. And I think that is incredibly powerful. So in a way, this was sort of a set of ideas, but is by no means exhaustive. And I'm sure you can think of a lot of things. Now, people very often make the comment, oh my God, my job as a teacher, as an educator is in jeopardy. There is this horrible thing called ChatGPT and I will be out of job. And my take on that, and that is sort of, I will shut up in a minute. My take on that is no. AI won't replace teachers, but teachers who use AI will replace those who don't. So, taken together, I think we have no other option but to teach how to work with AI and include that into the curriculum, whether it's maths, whether it's biosciences, whether it's English, it doesn't matter. This is something for us to, it will stay here and it will only get better, as Cesare said. And with that, I shut up and thank you for your attention. And I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Peter, that was wonderful. I think a round of applause there. I think bring in a kind of a very different disciplinary perspective there, but again, grounding it very, very nicely. We've got quite a few questions coming in. If you don't mind, I'll try and work my way through some of those. So the first one is from Marianne, who's asking kind of about your experience. That can you get ChatGPT to write the answer in the style of, say, an average undergraduate or an excellent undergraduate student? So have you kind of tried that to use it, sort of contextualize its own responses?
That's a very good question. The answer is no, I haven't tried that. However, what I have done is I have given my students sort of a mock exam where they had short answer questions, so 4 or 5 sentences. And because I was too lazy writing the answers myself, I asked ChatGPT to write the answers. And then I looked at the answers that I got from ChatGPT and I thought, well, actually, this is pretty good. I would give it at least a 2-1. And if they put in a diagram, they get a first. So in a way, I think it can be done, but I haven't tried it.
So building on that, another question, which is something that I've seen someone like, Jeremy Pritchard, who you'll know from your own discipline, Peter. But is it possible for students to kind of create models that generate their own potential assessment style questions and solutions by kind of training the model? So have you sort of seen that, students using this almost as a kind of a revision style tool to generate practice questions and then answer them?
I have started to train my students to do that. I have asked them to think about a prompt where they can ask ChatGPT to write a fill the blank quiz. How would you go about to do that? That's one of the common quizzes that we do. Fill the gap. And some of the students had some great ideas for that. So we are currently, in a way, we are exploring how can we create new assessments for the students. And if I can sort of set these assessments, then the students can also sort of reverse engineer almost and think about how they can do these assessments themselves.
And I think this kind of goes back to one of the key strategies that we will all have to have, which is it's not about, as Cesare was saying, sort of detect and then penalize. It's about that kind of educating students in how to use these in an ethical way as part of the learning process.
I have to admit, I have been a little bit naughty because I told my students how to evade detection, which they would have found out anyway, because if you ask ChatGPT for ways to evade detection and you dig long enough, you will come across there, for example, what I call the Q method, where you put in the letter Q between words several times, and then you change it to the background color. And the AI will never find that it wouldn't make sense anymore. Turn it in, says, sorry, what garbage is that? And all the AI detection software is nonsense. The good thing is at Kent, we decided actively not to turn on any AI detection because of its limitations. So I wasn't that bad.
Yeah, and I think that was consistent across the sector.
Yeah.
A question from Nikesh: have you used generative AI models to help students improve academic writing skills?
I have asked them to put a paragraph into ChatGPT and see how ChatGPT, for example, structures certain elements of what they have written. So I remember I had one student where it was sort of almost like a stream of consciousness what they produced. And I said to them, take that, put that into ChatGPT and ask it to give it a structure. And the student came back to me and was, oh, wow, I did not expect that. Mm-hmm. So in a way, yes.
And I think final question, because what I'm hoping is this will be the first of possibly several Talmo sessions around generative AI. I think there's lots of things coming in. I think it'd be great to have further sessions on this topic. But last question, Peter, because I think you then earn a well-earned cup of tea, is from Matthew, who's asking about student abilities to kind of distinguish between reliable sources. So there's lots of evidence that I was talking to a colleague here today who was sort of saying some of the references used were kind of Newton 2002 and Einstein 1995 and things like that. Do you sort of think that student ability to kind of critically analyze sources will get worse in an AI era or better because it will force them to kind of check the validity?
I think with my biology hat on, I think there will be natural selection in a way. Those who will take it sort of as gospel and don't check it and use it in a not critical way, they will be immediately they will be the bottom of the barrel. Whereas students who then say, right, I need to check up on these sources. I need to make sure that ChatGPT didn't hallucinate. I need to check that. I need to make my essay that has been written by ChatGPT, I need to make it look like it has been written by me. They will then eventually, they will be successful. So it is a catalyst for critical thinking, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think that's absolutely right, Peter. And I think we're certainly looking at it here in the context of Bloom's taxonomy. And that's, you know, very much going to be our institutional strategy. I think, if I may, I will suggest we say thank you again to Cesare and to Peter. I know we've done that a couple of times, but I think that really is quite well earned. I think what this has flagged is that more sessions on this theme are very much welcome. I see that in the chat. And as Rachel's very kindly pointed out, you know, people with ideas or things they want to talk about, please do come back to us, because we'd love to hear about people who are trying different strategies and ideas to mitigate some of the effects of generative AI. But once again, I think that round of applause for Peter and Cesare. And thank you to everyone who's come along today. It really has been a fascinating session. I've certainly learned a lot. Thank you both.
Thank you very much. Thank you.